Okay, so training in jiu-jitsu in the evenings can cause a lot of problems for people with sleep. It can mean that you struggle to get to sleep. It can mean that your mind's racing even though you're tired. And then that affects the quality of your sleep, and that then has a knock-on effect for your training later in the week or your work or family life or whatever. The first thing that you need to look at is, are you taking in caffeine before you train in the evenings? If you are, stop. You don't need it. And if you feel like you do, then that's something that you need to address, because realistically, the output benefit that you get from caffeine is not worth the recovery cost that comes from poor sleep afterwards. Not to mention the fact that realistically, your training is more about skill than it is about pure output. I would definitely suggest things like caffeine before competition and things like that. But realistically, if you're training in the evening, you need to stop essentially. Realistically, just stop taking it. I was one of these people who used to do that. I used to get home from working as a teacher, have a nap and a coffee at like 5, and then think that was fine, and then wonder why I couldn't sleep until like midnight, which was, with hindsight, really stupid. So I know it's not easy, and I know it's easy to fall into the idea that you need to have that, but you don't. It really isn't that much of a boost. And realistically, you need that boost at competition. You don't need that boost at every single training session, because it's no longer a boost. It's just a habit that you formed. So yeah, caffeine would be my first port of call, because that's going to really mess people up. The other thing is that because it's very intense, because it gets you thinking, because it engages your brain in a different way to the way that some sports can, unless you're very, very invested. There's a big cognitive load. It's the same for like before exams and stuff like that, or when you're sort of revising before exams and things like that. So we want to do something that will stimulate the nervous system so that we can bring everything back down. We can push into a rest and digest state rather than the fight or flight state that the adrenaline of essentially fighting for your life as far as your nervous system is concerned happens. So that's why we also want to avoid the stimulants, because jiu-jitsu is already stimulating enough. We don't need a stimulant on top of that. But here's something very, very easy that you can do, and I'm going to show you a few different things that you can kind of play with. So first you need 2 shoes and a wall. You lie back down on the floor, put your feet up in the air. You can just lie flat on the floor if you want, but generally this is quite nice on the hips and low back when you've done jiu-jitsu. 1 shoe in your stomach, 1 shoe here. Relax down. Breathe in through your nose. And out through your mouth. And do 30 breaths like that. This shoe is on your chest to remind you to not... you could probably put it higher, but I've got the microphone here. Essentially what we want to do is be using your diaphragm to breathe. We're not accentuating the belly breath on purpose where we're really pushing out. It's more that we're trying to make sure that you're not using your upper chest to kind of pull with your neck and drag the breath in. We're just trying to use your diaphragm and your ribcage to expand outwards. So it can be even better to kind of put one very high like this, and then the other one just below your sternum. If you feel the sternum one moving and the other one not moving, or moving much less, that's generally a good sign. 30 breaths like that can be very helpful. You can also do them flat like this. You can kind of do them knock-kneed like that, so you can kind of relax everything in. If you're at home and you're next to the bed, you can put your feet up on the bed like that, so you'd have the bed here and it would be behind your calves, and you can just kind of relax that way as well. But yeah, 30 breaths like that is a very good place to start if you're struggling with this sort of thing. If you find that you do that and it hasn't really done anything, you can try, I wish I could remember the proper name for this, but essentially Wim Hof breathing. Just to make a massive caveat here, be very, very careful about the claims that Wim Hof makes about his method. and be very careful. You do not do it in cold water. Yeah, the breathing work by itself is plenty. I used that a lot when my first child was born because of broken sleep. The only thing that get me back after the like pure adrenaline shot of a child screaming you awake. So I'll put a link in the description so that you can find a basic video on that. The other one is meditation. Again, I need to put a caveat on this. Meditation is not for everyone. For some people, it can have a very, very poor effect on their mental health. It can lead to people feeling detached or almost like their reality is no longer real. So if you get any of those symptoms when you were doing meditation, fucking stop. It's fine. It isn't for everyone to use. I will leave a link to the app that I use, which I think is excellent as well. And then, yeah, finally, I've got a video called, or a series of videos called Unfuck Your Grappler's Neck. And I'll put a link to that playlist below, but that's a really good one. It's probably be the first one alongside the lying on the floor. Those would be the kind of the first two I'd go to, just because the benefits of using that on neck pain and kind of upper back mobility are massive. So they will make things feel better, allow you to relax your head and actually feel better when you go to sleep. Because fundamentally, physically, you've got the problem from jiu-jitsu of everything around your head and neck being tight and feeling tight, and that can really affect how easily you can get comfortable and therefore go to sleep. And then sort of mentally, the level of stimulation, and the breath just pushes you back into that rest and digest state. It stimulates the vagal nerve, and it just has a huge effect on bringing you back down from that very, very heightened state. Other people use stuff like cold baths. As I see it, you've got a pendulum that swings from recovery to rest and digest through to fight or flight, all the way up to freeze, but I'll not get into all of that. And for me, in my head, whether this is accurate or not, you're knocking someone back into rest and digest with like a sledgehammer, rather than like with breath, where it's kind of a gentle push. So I would always go to breath first, because we want to get the most out of the least, especially in terms of fatigue, because whether people like to admit it or not, cold exposure is another stressor for you to recover from. So hopefully that's been helpful for you. If you've got any questions, if you're one of my clients, feel free to just message me about all of that. If you're not, put a comment down below. I'll get back to you.